Okay? It is false to claim that markets are efficient when assumptions A through C fail. All right? This is completely non-controversial. It is simply, you can prove mathematically that markets are not socially optimal when one of the first three assumptions fails. Okay? Now, unfortunately, as a society in this country, we've descended to a depth of microeconomic misinformation such that it is in fact possible for public figures, elected officials, to make statements about the social optimality of markets in cases where one of these assumptions manifestly fails. And to convince you of that, I will direct your attention back to the 2012 presidential election when Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, Rick Scott, Florida, Rick Perry, Texas, was asked, someone said to him, your state has the highest rate of people without any health insurance. What do you have to say about that? What do you have to say about the role of government in creating that condition or potentially ameliorating it? And what Rick Perry said was, I prefer to trust the market. Okay? Which is implicitly a way of saying, markets know best, markets are best. This market for health insurance, if I just stay out of the way, will reach an equilibrium that is socially optimal. That can't be true because the assumptions of the model are violated in the case of health insurance. Right? Health insurance is a market that is riddled with moral hazard and adverse selection because of asymmetric information. There's no controversy among economists about that statement. That is not a controversial statement among economists. Somehow we've gotten to a place where, and you guys have to go out and fight the good fight here because you now know enough economics to go and even if you vote for Rick Perry, you should still be willing to go and knock on his door and say, Governor Perry, I love everything that you've done for Texas, including making all of these destitute and unworthy people not have insurance, but I need to correct you on a point of mathematically uncontroversial economic theory. What you said was wrong. Okay? Weirdly, to me, surprisingly, this has always, from the very first day I learned any economics, which was the beginning of August of 2002, surprisingly to me, it is a very controversial statement to say that the markets are efficient when assumptions D through E fail. Right? It is false, it is just as false to claim that markets are efficient when assumptions D or E fail. Okay? If the assumptions of the model fail, the conclusions of the model don't hold. That's just how models are. You don't get to argue with that statement. This is once you've gone down the road of building models and drawing conclusions from those models, and particularly once you've gone down the road of informing public policy decisions with the conclusions that you've drawn from your models, you do not get to argue with this statement legitimately. You can't. Okay? You can't argue with that statement. And yet, for some reason, it's a very controversial thing to say. A big part of the argument is markets drive out irrational behavior. We've seen that that's not true. A lot of times people will say, well, most of the evidence you have about irrationality is actually from not that interesting experimental settings. I think I hope to have shown you a decent amount of evidence that can't be the whole story. And to a large extent, economists will simply say, look, we're not in the business of questioning people's willingness to pay. We have established that willingness to pay is what we mean by private benefit. Okay, we've established that. We have made a normative choice to define value in terms of the dollar willingness to pay. And it is not our place, nor is it the government's place, to question your consumption decisions. Okay? If you choose not to invest for your retirement, right? If you choose to make decisions about buckyballs without knowing the true health consequences, if you choose not to go to the gym because of self-control problems, it's not that we want to punish you for that, although that's sometimes where it feels like we wind up. It's that we don't believe that it is our right as economists or the government's right, as sort of like Big Brother, to say you're wrong. That's your business. You made your choice. So we actually want to stand on the assumption of rationality as a philosophical and normative and almost ethical or moral stance. You get to decide what's good for you. Okay? Now, where I come from as a behavioral economist is, and a highly flawed human being, I can show you a lot of psychological evidence that the rationality assumption fails. I can also show you models that are every bit as rigorous as the standard model of classical market failure that will give us exactly the same kind of ability to identify where market outcomes are likely to be suboptimal and what we might do to ameliorate the suboptimality. Okay? So where I come from is I don't have to accept your moral stance. I'm going to adopt a different moral stance, or a different normative stance. Moral is probably too problematic of a word. I'm going to adopt a different normative stance, which is I'm going to say there are cases in which I can use fairly well-founded social science to make reasonably confident statements about what you would actually choose for yourself if you were able to make choices that reflect the true benefits according to your own preferences. Right? So we've seen all these situations where people's willingness to pay for things is not equal to preferences that they themselves could express. Right? So we see present bias people exhibiting, revealing their true preference for long-term health. And then we see them behaving in ways that do not maximize those revealed preferences. And we can say with some confidence, whoops, that's a person who's making a mistake as defined by their own revealed preferences. Okay? And then we can take that and we can potentially extrapolate. And again, anytime you do anything, you can't step outside of the house without taking a normative stance. Right? You can't be engaged in discourse about how society should be governed without coming from some normative stance. And you get to choose and you get to decide what's a valid normative stance and what isn't. Okay? All right. Fine. Let's try a little of this. Let's just see, let me try to convince you that the exact same apparatus you've learned in 100A is going to allow us to do some work when we start to relax the assumption of consumer rationality. Okay, so we learned about shiny object bias, right? This is where you think that you're going to get the exciting gain utility from your new iPhone. What, 6? Have they released 7 already? And then you discover that actually after a short while your reference pointed apps and the gain utility goes away. Okay? So that's projection bias reference dependence. Question to you, what is the dead weight loss when consumers have PDRD? Okay? So what I've drawn is a model that you've seen before. This is not supposed to be an S, it's supposed to be a D. Okay, so this is the rational, what we might call the rational demand curve, or sort of like, in some sense, the true demand curve based on the value that people will actually get from this shiny object over the long haul. And this is their actual willingness to pay. This is the observed demand curve based on their projection bias. Okay? And then so we're assuming the supply curve is rational. Right? So the question is, which of these triangles represents dead weight loss? Take a O. For some reason I said on your own. You're welcome to talk to one another. Remember that if you change your answer after some discussion, you can just click a different button. It looks like everybody's got an answer in. Should we stop? Everybody's cool? Okay. Mysteriously, people keep showing up without coming through the door. Okay. So we have a slight majority saying 1 and a decent-sized minority saying 2. What I actually would like to ask for, see if we can actually accomplish this, could somebody, okay, so let me do this. Somebody who said B, could somebody who said B actually walk me, I'll be your robot hand, walk me through those 5 steps that we did a few slides back to get to your answer of area number 2? Who's willing to do that? Come on, lots of people would pay huge amounts of money to manipulate my, treat me like a robot. Yeah, go.
So the right edge of triangle number 2, follow that up to the intersection of P projected and S projected, draw that down as Q market.
Okay, so this is the market outcome. This is supply. This is demand. That's actual observed demand in the marketplace. That's people really paying for things. Okay, so that's Q market.
You go to the extreme left corner of triangle 2, you draw down, that's Q equilibrium.
This is the actual, that's Q.
Sorry, Q optimal.
That's the optimal Q. Why?
That would be the actual personal marginal, or actual societal marginal benefit.
So what we're calling the D rational, what we're calling the rational demand curve, is actually the value people think that they're going to get, which they express in their willingness to pay, minus the chunk of that that they aren't actually going to get. Okay, the chunk of that that is simply that's a mistake on their part, right? That they won't actually experience. So this, what we're calling the rational demand curve, what they would be willing to pay if they were fully rational, is actually our marginal social, marginal private benefit curve. Now in this case, we're not thinking about externalities or anything else, so we're just going to say that that's also the marginal social benefit, right? So this is actually very similar to a situation where people have imperfect information about the long-term costs and benefits of things. In fact, I think you could kind of argue that projection bias reference dependent, I'm going to come back in a minute, the projection bias reference dependent preferences is a case of imperfect information, right? Because you incorrectly perceive the long-term benefits of this good, right? Because you have imperfect information about how your reference point is going to adapt. So it's a very similar concept, okay? Of course, it introduces all kinds of, it's funny why you should still have that misapprehension after all the shiny objects most of us have purchased. Next.
So then I guess the Q market guy probably shouldn't have bought his shiny object.
Probably shouldn't. The marginal guy in the market, it probably shouldn't have bought the phone. So what are these? We're calling these are suboptimal units. It's exactly the same as what we saw a minute ago, okay? And so you just do the same thing, right? So here was the cost to society of those units, and here was the actual benefit to society of those units. Good? Okay? So what we did here was we said, look, areas 1 and 2 together are the sort of harm that an individual, the areas 1 and 2 together are the sort of total error in people's willingness to pay over these units, but they only had to, but what we care about is not sort of the harm that they cause themselves, but the harm to society as a whole, right? And that's why we look at the difference between the marginal social benefit and marginal social cost curve to identify the cost to society. Okay? If we wanted to, we could then pick that apart and say, because I think it's, if you're going to actually do the crosstown taxi routine, then you have to also be able to say, someone says, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Who have you benefited? I don't get it. So then you can turn around and say, now that I've identified the right answer, let me see if I can figure out how to interpret it. And producer and consumer surplus is a good way to go with that, right? So here was the market outcome. Okay, this was the price, and this was the quantity. The true consumer surplus is this. Okay, minus there's a chunk where right between here and here for all of these units, they're actually paying a price that's above their true marginal benefit. So consumers are losing. I should probably hatch it the other way. They're losing this much consumer surplus, right? So their true consumer surplus is this area minus this area. Okay, but producers, right? A chunk of that, this chunk here, is being transferred from consumers over to producers. That's producer surplus. Okay, and that leaves behind this area here. Sorry, this is I'm doing a very bad job here of distinguishing one area from another. That leaves behind this area here. Okay, that's the sort of net harm that consumers are doing to themselves by paying too much for these goods. Neil, you have a very grim look on your face. You're okay? You're good. All right. You're thinking to yourself, this is fantastic. I'm going to get a job with David Cameron when I go home. Okay, good. You can all do this? Better be able to do this because I'm pretty sure it's on problem set 5. All right. So yeah, so this is conceptually very similar to an externality. It's also conceptually very similar to imperfect information. And now you know what to do. Okay. Final Eichlicker question, a couple of them. So we've seen various situations already where we could do this kind of analysis. Okay, so if gym attendance is habit forming, what is the welfare effect of projection bias about habit formation? We've just done welfare effect of projection bias with respect to reference-dependent adaptation. What is the welfare effect? You can draw a diagram if you want, of projection bias about habit formation. Let's say in gym attendance. Okay, take another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Okay. So the bulk of you say dead weight loss due to underconsumption of gym attendance. Why? Somebody who hasn't piped up yet? Why that? Someone talk us through the analysis? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just thought they're going to over
they're going to underconsume. Oh, and they think they're going to form a habit and they don't. Oh, man, you always come up with something that's really interesting and not what I was thinking. That's the whole, I mean, this is right. This is, they always say you learn more from your students than they learn from you. That's not what I had in mind, but I need to puzzle that through. It's the other direction. I'm thinking of a situation where it is habit forming, and you fail to predict that. But what's driving the underconsumption here? Because you don't have the habit yet. Okay, let's see if we can get from there to the projection bias piece. Okay, so you don't realize that it's going to be more worthwhile once you go to the gym. Let's suppose that the habit is formed after going every day for 21 days, which is kind of this rule of thumb that a lot of people have. What we're interested in is your willingness to pay for those 21 days, those first 21 visits. You think what they're worth is the value you anticipate you will get out of them while you're going, because you don't realize that they're also going to generate benefits by giving you a long-term habit, which is of value to you. If someone came along and said, hey, for $15 I can give you a permanent lifetime gym attendance habit, you might say, woo, that's pretty cool, the habit's a nice thing to have. What you don't realize is that you could go out and buy that habit for yourself at the cost of just going to the gym for 21 days. Okay, so your willingness to pay, your willingness to make effort to go to the gym does not reflect. Right, there's a piece of information that is not incorporated into your willingness to pay for gym attendance, which is the long-term value of going for the first 21 days, because it causes you to have a habit that you should value. Okay? Does that make sense? This is what you had in mind?
Yeah.
Sure. Sounds good. I'll take one of those. So this is what I have in mind, and you need to sort of understand the psychology and the model that we've learned in order to be able to puzzle through what is the real value. So if I draw a supply and demand for gym attendance, let's just make life simple and say the supply curve is flat. If this is people's willingness to pay, right, what I'm saying is there's a benefit to these people of going to the gym, which is that it will cause them to form a habit. They're not taking that into account. So the actual private marginal benefit is going to be above the demand curve. So if that's demand, I'm arguing, based on the model that we've seen a lot of evidence in support of, the marginal private benefit curve in our model should actually be above, which means that people are not consuming enough, right? So this would be Q market, and this would be Q opt. And so what we have is underconsumption. Right? We have gone below optimality. Again, a breakdown in the information aggregating function of the market is people don't have the right information. Okay? Now, there are other situations where the problem isn't that people don't have the right information. The problem is that people can't implement a decision based on the information that they actually have. So we don't have time to actually do this as a clicker question, but if we think about present bias preferences, and we can do this in the absence of commitment devices, this could be someone who has perfect information, a sophisticate, but because she doesn't have availability, she doesn't have a commitment device available to her, she's not able to implement her preferred, perfectly well-informed choice. Right? So it's not always a lack of information in the form of irrational expectations that can drive this kind of thing. It could be all kinds of other irrationalities that cause people to express a willingness to pay that deviates from the true value that they get from their consumption choices. All right, more on this on Thursday.